Hello and welcome back to the Flicks Forum podcast with Jesse and MJ, where each week we go back and look at a Netflix original film in the order of release. This is our 5th day of Podmas, where we are releasing an episode every day in the lead up to Christmas. So today we are looking at Netflix's 53rd film. It's the 2017 comedy drama, The Meyerowitz Stories, New and Selected, directed by Noah Baumbach, and it stars Adam Sandler, Ben Stiller, Dustin Hoffman, Elizabeth Marvel, and Emma Thompson. Hi, MJ.
Day 5 of Podmas.
We're getting there.
The weather is luckily beautiful in Australia, as it always is in December. So it is great to be able to punch out a movie every day and then talk about it with you.
We're only 5 days in and I'm like, it's still pretty daunting looking forward.
Nah, it's good. We're smashing it and we enjoy it. So let's just keep it going. And this was nice to see a nice big Hollywood cast in a Netflix original film.
Massive cast. So we kick off our show with a little quick summary called The Fast Flicks. MJ, what's your summary of this film?
A family dynamic not too far out of the realms of normal, in various stages of their own lives, come together and discover more about their pasts, their differences, and what it really means to be a family.
Oh, that's really nice.
Yeah.
I like that.
It was really nice.
I've said a story told through the vignettes about a dysfunctional family with the focus around the father's role in their lives.
I think yours is more nice.
I like yours. Sounded really nice. Mine's like the father. The father.
No, but the father plays a huge part. Like, it kind of
role.
brings everyone together. So
Yeah. All right. Well, what's some things that we've learnt about anything to do with the making of this film?
I found it very interesting that Elizabeth Marvel, who played Jean, mentioned that she basically used Frito Corleone from Godfather as her inspiration, the way she played her character, which afterwards you sit there and think like, okay, like the kind of the outcast sibling and never quite fit in. And, it certainly had a very different feel to the character, but I like the fact apparently she watched a whole lot of John Cazale films afterwards and used him to get into character, and it was a really interesting character too.
Yeah, good. All right, well, this one, so it was actually filmed in 2016. So between March and May in 2016. So it was held off for a while, but I guess that sort of goes with, it was held off for Cannes Film Festival in 2017. And again, this was the same year that Okja.
Yeah, I was just thinking that.
Yeah, the same festival. So this was a part of that French sort of change of rules for Cannes in the following, where they wanted them to release it theatrically, but means they wouldn't have been able to put it on Netflix in France for 36 months after. So yeah.
It's going to be really interesting to see how that... And that's obviously not just France where that happens. It's going to be interesting to see how those rules change over time when... and it's still happening, right now in 2019 with... Obviously, Netflix having to release films, as we've seen, in theatres to get them available for award nominations. Yep. But just the way that the industry is trending, are we going to look back on that in 10 years and go, hey, remember when they used to have to do that stupid thing?
Yeah. Well, they got a 4-minute standing ovation at the festival, which was... It's nice. Nice when you hear these little... I don't know who sits there with the timer and times exactly how long.
You always hear this stuff. And you know what? Is there a thing when you're at these festivals that you feel obliged to clap for longer because you know that's how it's going to be reported?
You'll probably be looking around, is a person next to me sitting down, or do I stay up?
Or do you sit there and go, okay, that was about a 3-minute kind of film, and then you set your stopwatch and you start clapping?
Because 4 minutes clapping is a long time.
It's a crazy long time.
Long time. During production, this film had the working title of Ye Din Ka Kissa, which is a Hindi phrase for the tale of this day. Yeah.
The Hindi reference I don't necessarily quite understand, but the title, say that again?
The tale of this day.
I don't mind that. I think that fits nicely.
Yeah, because it's more about the time they're living in, I guess, rather than a specific day. Yeah. So what about the consensus? Or have you got anything else?
Oh, just the awards.
Oh, yeah.
We're not used to discussing awards on our Netflix original podcast. We occasionally have the odd random award that something was nominated for that we've never heard of, but in the case of this film, it won 4 awards, and it was nominated for 7 others. So just having a quick look now on IMDb.
11 nominations altogether. It's pretty big.
It's really good for this.
Yeah.
So they won the Best Ensemble Cast, which is great award for this film. Makes a lot of sense. At the Boston Society of Film Critic Awards.
Yep.
They at Cannes, I did see this one. They won the Palm Dog Award, which they basically award to like the best dog on a film. So the dog in this film, whose name was Einstein, as in the real dog's name was Einstein, won an award.
Well, we're talking about dogs. Is there a dog update for you on this one?
Oh yeah, like let's get to it now. My dogs didn't enjoy the dog on the film just because when you're first introduced to the dog, he just barks and he's off screen and he's barking the whole time. What was his name again?
I don't know. He's a vicious dog though.
Yeah,
without his dog, we probably wouldn't have had this film.
True. But he kept like just saying like, "Oi, be quiet, be quiet." And I'm like, "No, do something about your dog because my dog's not enjoying it." But yeah, won a bunch of awards and was nominated for a lot of other awards. So really good to see. I'm sure Netflix would have loved this back in 2017.
Yeah. So we spoke before. It debuted at Cannes, and then it went on to open at the New York Film Festival, the London Film Festival, the Hamptons International Film, and the Mill Valley Festival, all in America, apart from the London, obviously. And then prior to releasing in October on Netflix, it was also part of the Rio de Janeiro Film Festival. And then it was actually held off from its release in Portugal and Sweden like a week after. I'm not sure what happened there, but
it's Netflix release.
Yeah, so released on the 13th of October, except Portugal, which was the next day, and then Sweden was the week after. So I'm not sure what happened there, but yeah.
No, that's interesting.
Yeah. What about the consensus for this film?
It was really, really good.
Positive. 93% on Rotten Tomatoes.
93 was it?
On 175 reviews. So
that's a lot of critics' reviews.
That is a lot too. And the audience was 72% on nearly 5,500.
Still really high.
Which is high, yeah.
You know what I love about looking at IMDb and Letterboxd for this film? Mm-hmm. There were more ratings on Letterboxd than there were IMDb.
About 60 or something?
Yeah. But that never happens.
No.
Like, it's normally like sort of Letterboxd has 1/3 of the amount of reviews as IMDb, but they're both sitting at 31,000 reviews. Letterboxd slightly higher.
Yep.
6.9 out of 10 on IMDb. 3.6 out of 5 on Letterboxd, which is big. It's quite really big. Good scores.
Yeah. Very, very high. So this was filmed in and around New York. Mm. There are a couple of little connections that are sort of... What did you think of Sigourney Weaver as a cameo?
I think it played nicely in the joke where you kept mentioning it.
I was just, wow, that was random.
It was interesting. I think they just needed any sort of celebrity so that Harold could have that story to relay.
Yeah.
And she said, "Hi, Harold," and I said, "Hi, Sigourney." She seemed really nice.
There was a Stephen King reference in this one.
It was a Stephen King
reference. So Matthew's got his son on his phone and he's sort of showing the photo off and he's like, "Oh, that looks like the kid from The Shining." And then the names as well.
I was going to say, yeah. Did you notice that the kid's name was Tony?
Tony, yeah.
And his brother's name was Danny?
Danny, yeah. It's very cool.
That's got to be deliberate.
Yeah. And
we cannot escape Stephen King at the moment.
No.
It's literally in like everything we do.
I know, it's crazy. I'm loving it.
What a man.
I like the music in this one too was all done by Randy Newman.
Yeah.
From a lot of Pixar sort of films.
Very Toy Story.
I really like that last song over the credits.
Well, the last song was the first time I knew that it was Randy Newman.
Yeah.
And I obviously didn't know the rest of it was Randy Newman, but yeah.
Yeah.
As soon as you start singing.
A couple of little product placements in there. There's a BlackBerry phone.
Specifically said Blackberry. We couldn't remember anything else.
They were drinking some Sam Adams beer, which I was like, oh yeah, that's good. So just a couple of little bits that I do love my products in there. Well, should we have a little bit of our early thoughts on this film?
Yeah.
What did you think, MJ?
I can't wait to hear what you thought. I really liked it.
Good.
I loved the relationships between the characters. I enjoyed the subtle humour and the emotion certainly came out for me. Great performances by as close as we'll get to an A-list cast on Netflix. This film was right up my alley. You?
Yeah, similar line. I thought the performances were fantastic. And it was hard not to get on board for this ride and just want to follow these characters.
Yep.
So I'm pretty positive on this one as well.
Good.
Yeah.
I know Heater's not here. I would love to hear what Heater has to say about this film. I reckon he'd battle through it.
It was a fairly long movie.
Although he does like a good performance, Heater.
He does. All right, well, let's have a look at some characters and hit us off with who you want to talk about first.
All right, well, I want to talk about Danny first, but we're going to have a lot of characters to talk about, which is...
This was
nice.
a character piece.
It really was. Look, I love that Danny was a real family man when family wasn't that important to everyone else in his family, strangely enough. And I enjoyed the fact that he was always annoyed when people didn't include him.
Yep.
He was very conscious of the fact that it's been this way for a long time. And right now he's probably experiencing that sense of loss again with his marriage breakup and then his daughter moving to college. Every single time something happened, he's like, oh, why didn't you call? Why didn't you tell me? Why wasn't I invited? It just felt really real. Like someone going through that, someone who's been kind of shunned their whole life. It just stood out in everything that he did. But he was the driving force in this film for me. I think you tend to latch onto characters, and I was Danny in this film.
Yeah, and I think they did a good job telling his story first and having him as the first character that you meet in that car, and that's why you latched onto him, I guess.
Yeah, for sure.
He just wanted people to like him. I just had that feeling that he would do anything for just some sort of affection, some sort of recognition. You know, his daughter, his brother, his dad, his ex-wife, these people, he all just felt that there was some sort of barrier between them, and he just didn't want that barrier there. He wanted them to be closer.
Which is interesting because there was definitely no barrier with his daughter.
Until...
Well, I think it was more perceived from him. For her, it wasn't. Like her dad was like her best friend, and which is really rare for that kind of relationship at that age. So he was like extremely lucky. Like, do you sit there and go, was Danny unsuccessful? Because obviously you never hear of him working, and you always hear that he never really had a job. And you look at the clothes that he wears; he's got nowhere to live. And you hear about his potential music career when he was younger, and he sort of threw it all away. But is he successful because he's just an incredible dad? Like, what a great dad and what a great family man. So,
and I think he was a good son as well.
He was a very good son, considering.
And yeah,
right to the end, he was a good son.
Yeah, and I think that they did a good job with the daughter, and you know, you could feel Danny's pain or discomfort when he felt like his brother was closer to her than he was.
Yeah, and all that kind of stuff as well. Yeah. Why are you texting him?
Yeah.
Why are you telling him?
Oh, you've seen her film. Oh, like all those little things. So Matt.
Yeah, Matt.
The stepbrother.
I think he sums himself up perfectly. How he talks about trying to outrun his father.
Yep.
The difference is he kind of still had that foresight and that good in him that he understood what he was doing. Maybe too late, but he understood it eventually by the end. Because it's interesting on the flip side of Danny is he always stresses half-brother.
Yeah.
Oh, there's a half-brother. Like he separates himself from the rest of them because he knows he's more successful. He kind of got away from them. But his change is really pleasant, really nice to see.
Yeah. Yeah, it wasn't just his dad he was running from, he was just running from that whole family dynamic, I guess. And you can't go past the part how money-focused he was as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, compared to Danny, who obviously you said didn't have a job, you know, it was just day-to-day what was going on, whereas Matt was like, everything was about money, his job, helping sell the property and the artwork. That's what it was about for him.
I think let's go straight into Harold now, because there's some things about Matt that tie into Harold really nicely.
Yep.
And you can't really talk about one without the other. And I think you could dissect Harold as a character for the entirety of this podcast, because of the idea that success meant everything to him, and B, his definition of success meant everything to him. And I'd probably get to it later in the scenes when Matt is calling him out for being, he's saying, I always tried to outrun you, why are you pushing me, rah, rah. And Harold wasn't even angry. He was just like, yeah, but you're so successful. I made you successful. Even though his son's mad at him, it didn't seem to bother him because he had made a son who was successful in his work. He had a lot of money. He'd done really well.
Yep.
And it rolls into Harold's distinct lack of empathy for anybody else. Almost sociopathic in the way that he doesn't understand how his own actions would impact people around him. You can completely understand that he's had 4 divorces.
Yeah.
3, I think one was annulled.
Yep.
So, and even in that realization at his friend's art show that the world is kind of moving on, and he has this sort of fleeting moment of panic where he starts running down the street. He still just elects to shut it all out, and he's just so hell-bent on his own agenda. He's so unaware of the people around him or even the conversations that he's in, what's happening. And he's just a really selfish guy.
He sort of comes across as selfish, but I feel like this was a part of his insecurities about he always felt left out. So whether that was from, and you clearly saw this through this art world, which he'd obviously spent, over 30 years teaching, he's got all this great work, and no matter what he'd done, he'd always felt sort of not included or left out. And in his life, I guess that's how he felt, whereas with this family situation, he sort of held the power or the gel with everyone, whereas everyone else was, in the outside of his world, there was nothing that sort of went right for him, whether it was his marriages or his relationship with his kids or his relationship with his grandkids. Like, there was just all these little things that, he was struggling, I guess.
I think it came down to his own definition of what was successful, and he didn't. Yeah. I don't think he sees himself as a successful artist.
No, not at all.
He kind of hung his hat on that piece of work that had been put away. That was like his one shining light. But he failed to notice, and this is what the film does really well, is how incredible a teacher he was, the impact that he had on his students.
Because we hear people talk about...
Exactly, you get testimonies about it.
And he talked about how much his kids meant to him to these other people, whereas the kids never actually felt that.
Yeah, exactly. But I don't think he ever thought he was successful because he didn't have his own art show, or he wasn't having pieces of work put into museums and all that kind of stuff. But the success was there. He just didn't see it. And
it was touching. Like, it was almost like, there was that scene where he goes to Matt's mum's house and there's that artwork on the wall of his, and he's like, oh, she put it on the wall. So, these little recognitions that, he takes them as wins, whereas I think, deep down he wanted this public recognition that he probably never got.
But he also thinks that the world kind of revolves around him, and the people in it are part of his story, and he uses them the way he sees fit. Like, you look at the way he treats Danny and Jean compared to the way he treats Matt. Yeah. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Like, and I know that's half the problem, and that's there's obviously a lot of commentary around family and around parenting and all that kind of stuff as well. But he doesn't quite seem to, and that's the thing. He's got no empathy. I think that's kind of the thing that I touched on earlier, because he's so in his own head and in his own world.
Agree. Eliza, I want to talk about her.
Yeah, so do I.
Because I see Eliza being the representation of everything Danny wished he was.
Oh, yeah?
So she's good with these relationships. She's happy to... She's got, had a boyfriend, got another boyfriend who's obviously really good for her. She's good at art or some sort of art musical sort of thing that Danny, wanted to be good at. Fits in with his brother or her uncle. So she's got all these relationships and things that, he's always wanted or wished he had. And
that's a really good point.
That's sort of what she is, and that's why I think he treats her so dearly. And towards the end, when you see, he tries to give her some advice about what she's drinking, and it just doesn't go well because he feels like that, that's my experience. You should be listening to me.
That's almost like a power struggle he has because Matt's there.
Yeah, as well. True. Yep.
He wants to show that he's... it's funny that you say that, because all those things that you say about Danny, on the surface, Danny doesn't have those things, even though he is a really good friend, he is a really good son, he is a really good father.
Yep.
She just kind of... Not that she does it better, it's just more obvious, the success that she has with it. I always also thought of her, I think you bang on there, I thought of her as almost like a 2017 when the film's made, but even like say 2019 version of like artistry as opposed to like the old school Howard. The way that art has changed between Howard, who would have been prominent in like the 60s, to what it is now. The distinct difference in what art is and how art is consumed and the way it's portrayed.
And how she can get her art to whoever she wants, whenever she wants, whereas his is just sitting inside this house.
How's the irony of them like having that show at the end when there's just a piece of art sitting there, and you're talking about her just flicking videos around on the computer, and I found that like a nice little just juxtaposition of both those characters. She had such a good heart though, and she was such a real family girl. When again at that age, how many times do you see people that age just kind of just put their family aside for a little bit?
Yeah, like as soon as Grandpa was sick, she was back. Bang, she was there. She was there to help out. Maureen. I wanted to chat about Maureen because... Can you
start? Yeah.
I've sort of felt for her a little bit. So she was always this outsider. She had no kids of her own. She's always in these awkward situations with these kids that obviously she's been in their lives, but none of them have really got this massively good connection with her. And... it's like she's having to take on all these kids who have got these daddy issues. So it's not necessarily that they have the issues with her, it's the issues with the dad. And I just thought that was it was done really nicely. And And she made this comment where she's like, she thinks all the kids are disappointments as children to their father. She made this comment towards the end. And I sort of thought, I like Matt's response to her because his response was pretty much, no one looked after them. And so it wasn't, Dad didn't look after him, Maureen didn't look out for him. So realistically, who was she to judge? And I feel that they did this through her alcoholism as well. Was she ever sober throughout that whole film?
Didn't seem to be.
Even though Harold was like, she's been clean 6 weeks, she stopped drinking.
And then the first time you see her, Jean's like, Maureen is happy.
She crashed into a tree. She does all these things. So I like that, she's happy to make these judgments on things, whereas, she's got her own issues that she's trying to deal with this family dynamic as well, I guess.
Yeah, I think you've nailed it with her. I found her really difficult to like, but for reasons that you've made clear. She obviously didn't understand the family dynamic in the Meyerowitz house, but how could she?
Yeah.
And the one thing I found her a little bit manipulative, but I kind of think that was a good thing because considering no one else could really manipulate Howard, she did have this ability to do it. And
you needed someone who could talk to him, really.
Yeah, and kind of make things happen because, as I said, he was so in his own head, in his own world. The idea of her getting them to sell the house, at the end of the film, I'm like, how the hell would she have done that? Because this guy is so difficult.
Yeah.
So there's something about her and having that outside of you. Because remember, this is just a story about a family, right? This is nothing about this big thing that happens to this really famous family. This is just a normal family. And the idea that an outsider can come in and look at a normal family who has their issues, but still sort of navigate their way through it in her own way.
And like you said, she was the person, she got stuff done. You see that the first scene, she's like, I need you to clean out your stuff from upstairs. Yeah. And she was the one that was pushing that along. So she was the doer of that family, I guess.
Getting those sunglasses out of the house.
Those sunglasses. Last one, I had one more, Jean. We haven't spoken about Jean.
Yeah, you go.
I like where you sort of meet her and they tell, what do you do? She works at Xerox.
Oh, yeah, I can't remember that.
Or she works with Xerox. And I just thought that was a quite funny little thing because she wasn't artistic, and it's this whole thing about, like you mentioned before, about this art sort of world. So she just makes copies of stuff. So she doesn't. So she doesn't actually have this, this ability to be creative a bit whereas the others have all tried to be. Yeah, they've got that skill somewhere. But she was a decent person who.
She was a good person.
Always there for the dad, no matter what.
She cares about her family, and she doesn't expect anything in return.
Not at all.
And I guess how would she ever expect anything in return when she's never got anything in return? But she knows that she deserves better. But just the idea, and it's such a simple idea when they're like, why are you doing this? And she's like, because it's family. And that idea is probably so relatable for so many people watching this film, being like, geez, my family, drives me crazy, but they're family.
Yeah.
Because she went through more than you could ever expect someone to go through, and then the way her dad handled that situation was terrible. The older she gets, the more foresight she should have of, geez, that was a really bad situation. And she's still there, even though he still constantly treats her like shit.
She's so thoughtful too, because the first scene where Danny comes back to the grandparents, she's just sitting in that other room waiting for him to have his time, and then I'm here too. Hi. It was just nice.
She said, I thought Dad wanted to greet you alone.
Yeah.
Sort of thing. Yeah. Crazy. She puts everyone in front of herself.
Yeah.
I had a lot of time for her.
Any other characters that you want to talk about?
No, I haven't.
There are lots of little minor characters along the way, but I think we've sort of touched on all the good ones that we probably need to.
Basically, the whole Meyerowitz family, really.
Yeah. So the director, Noah Baumbach. Do you know of his work?
I do. The only film I've actually seen of his is Greenberg.
Yep.
Which also starred Ben Stiller, which I watched probably not long after it came out and I had a lot of trouble with.
Okay.
But very familiar with Kicking and Screaming, While We're Young,
Marriage
Story on Netflix.
And it's been directing since 1995, so this is sort of one of those directors where it's a director that's done a fair bit of work.
Oscar nominated for Best Original Screenplay back in 2005.
Yeah.
He's certainly got a big name for himself, and good get.
Yeah, and the cast I think was amazing. I thought. You don't try and recast this in any way.
No, you can't, can you? I thought Adam Sandler was... I mean, we've actually, obviously... This is the fourth Adam Sandler film we've done.
Yeah.
So this would have been the last one of his first stint, because he did 4 films first up for Netflix, or did the stand-up comedy...
Does this count as one of his Netflix films, though?
Okay, maybe not actually.
It's a good thing I probably should have looked up, because I don't know if this actually counts as one that
because this is just a film he was in.
Yeah, this was on a Happy Madison production.
Very good point. It's not like Sandy Wexler's and Ridiculous Six and
Do-overs.
Do-over.
Yeah.
It's a very good point.
Yeah, I'm not sure that it actually counts, but...
Nah, good point.
Yeah.
But we've kind of critiqued his performances over the episodes. I got to take my hat off to him. I thought he was awesome.
Yeah, he was really good.
Really, really good. It wasn't the Adam Sandler we knew. It was still a little bit of the Adam Sandler.
There are a few scenes there.
But like, we love that Adam Sandler. So, awesome performance. Well done, mate.
Look at some scenes.
Let's look at some scenes.
Give the audience a rundown of some scenes that really stood out for you.
Well, I've got some good ones because I did like this film. The opening scene where they're looking for a park was a great way to introduce both of those characters.
Sure was.
I love the way that Danny would completely lose his cool and then just go back to Eliza and just have the most normal conversation.
I liked how they opened that, him being a bad driver and, swearing at people, and then they closed his little opening story with that same sort of scene where he's in the car by himself.
Oh, yeah.
And it sort of cuts to the next story. So I liked that little closure in that one little story almost. That was good.
That was really good. I loved the song that they sang, Mummy and Daddy and Genius Girl Make Three. When they were singing that at the house. And
I liked all the situations around the piano, because it was this time where they brought everyone together.
Yeah.
I think looking at the credits, there were 2 original Sandler songs, so probably the first time since the Ridiculous Six maybe that we've had an original Sandler song.
What was the song? Oh,
Around the Campfire.
No, this is a good song. Have you seen his stand-up?
I have.
Yeah, he's got some great songs in that.
Yeah, it's a good stand-up. I think we've probably mentioned that before. It's a good show, worth watching.
I loved it when Eliza sent her first movie, and obviously it's pretty graphic, and they watch it for about a minute, and then he closes the laptop and says, "I'm gonna watch this alone first, I think." After they'd already seen like everything. I thought that was very funny. That was great humor timing, and it actually showed a lot about Eliza's character that you didn't necessarily know at that point, like how far out she was into her art. I mentioned this before talking about the characters, but I loved the scene when Matthew was calling Harold out at the car, and Harold just not understanding because he thinks Matthew's a success because he makes money, and that just really highlighted where Matthew was coming from, and it showed a turn in Matthew.
Yeah, it was a nice scene.
In the way he sort of... back to another little funny moment when they found out about how the guy molested Jean.
Yeah.
And they were trying to think of what to do. And before they ruined the car, Daddy just goes, "I'm going to spit on him."
I like them. They go, "Should we kick the shit out of him?" Nah, he's 80. Okay, let's spit on him.
I love that was like the go-to.
And I like the follow-up on that as well. Like to cut it, they smash the living daylights out of this car, and they go back, thinking Jean's going to be so happy that they've done this for her, and she's like, he has dementia.
What the hell are you doing?
And they're like, "Well, he didn't have dementia when he molested you." And she's like, "He did not molest." She's like, "Well, I'm glad you feel better, but I'm still fucked up." That was good.
There was also, that was just a nice little bonding moment between the siblings.
Yeah.
The final one I want to bring up, and I think this kind of sums up the movie really well. Based off the quote, the scene itself I didn't love, but I loved it when Danny said, "Sometimes I wish Dad had done one horrible, unforgivable thing. Something specific I could be angry about, but it isn't one thing. It's tiny things every day." And
Drip,
he says,
drip.
drip. But it's just the perfect observation of his own dad, his own situation. But I also think it sums up the movie really well, because the movie is more or less about, obviously, a whole host of things, family and parents and sibling rivalry and success and fulfillment and all that kind of stuff. But it's shown in a way that it highlights the tiny moments that sort of build up life and how you deal with the fact that life actually is just a situation of small moments as opposed to these big moments that you think you're always going to remember. You're more defined by the little things.
Yep.
And that's what this film is basically doing scene by scene.
Nice.
That's what I
nice
love
little
about
collection.
the film too.
Well, I had a couple of those. So the other ones that I had as well, I thought the early bonding scene with Danny and Harold, where they have like these little sort of like little cuts of them doing all these different things when they're playing billiards, and then you see he's got that temper. He's like, I saved all this money for that pool cue. It's just I thought that was funny. I liked whenever Harold ran. There were a couple of times where he ran, and I was like,
"This." He did it more than once, did he?
So he ran from the art show.
Yeah.
He ran to chase the guy with the jacket. There are these little scenes, and it just reminded me of my uncle and how he runs. But I don't know why I liked that.
Dustin Hoffman was excellent. We should mention.
Yeah, he was. Harold's fussiness with those restaurants. I really enjoyed those scenes because, and then when he goes, he complains, it's $35 for that piece of salmon. And then he goes, does it blow you for that? And then follow on with that chase with the jacket. I thought that was funny as well.
He was really frustrating me by that point though. I was just like, this guy. I'm like, the whole time, I bet he didn't take your jacket. Like, you're just going to make your son look like an absolute dickhead.
And that's obviously part of that fall that he had. He's starting to lose a little bit of his memory and stuff, what's happening.
Yeah.
I like the moment where the three kids, they're in the hospital and they start to sit down and write down everything that's happening. And it's like the first time you see them all working together.
Yeah.
I really like that because it shows this change of them as a group and as a family almost. And, you see this follow-on scene where they're sitting around drinking, around the piano, playing cards. I just like that little moment as a family that you got to see them.
Well, they kind of got guilted into it from Matthew at the start. And it's like, why aren't you writing all this down? They're like, oh, okay. And they're the two that don't fit in, so why wouldn't they do it, right?
But then they worked well because they took over shifts, watching and sharing the notes and working together. I did like that. The scene towards the end where Danny and Matt are arguing over their lives.
Okay.
Out on the grass and they start to wrestle and all that sort of stuff. I mean, I get that they probably had that precursor where they take those pills to sort of heighten the emotions between the two, but I did like that they put it out there.
So I didn't have this in my scenes I didn't like. I wrote, I liked it, and then I didn't like it, and then I liked it, and then I didn't like it, and then they had the scuffle sort of thing. Yeah. There was times where sometimes it was like almost, this felt like it was going to be the most pivotal scene in the film, and I guess maybe that comes down to the drugs that they took.
Yeah.
It just felt so... It just changed pace every single time. I didn't know what was going to... And then Eliza comes out and, has that scuffle with the drink. And I'm like, oh, this is not working. And then they have to have a little fight. And I just couldn't... Because there are bits of it I loved and there's bits that I really didn't like.
And I think that's
what
funny scene. I like that up and downness of it because that's what family's about sometimes.
True.
Up and down.
You're right.
Last bit, I thought it was really obvious, but I liked that the piece of art that Matthew bought wasn't actually about him. I could see it coming. I knew it wasn't going to be actually about him, but I did like that. I thought that was nice.
Can't believe you got a piece of art you call after one of your sons, and
yeah, because he'd made a big discussion earlier in the film where that LJ guy had made a piece of artwork about his daughter, and he made a big comment about you shouldn't bring your kids into your artwork. So from that moment on, when there was a piece of artwork called Matthew, I was like, there's something more to this than being about Matthew.
Yeah.
So I thought it was obvious, but I did like it.
It was kind of nice as well when he said, I wasn't born that year. And then he just real blasé was like, oh, it must have been Danny.
Yeah.
It was... Normally he would never want to admit to that.
No, because he's changed and he realises how much Danny actually does do.
Yeah. It was kind of cool about that.
Yeah. All right, what didn't you like?
Very little, mate. I kind of half didn't like that scene I spoke about before. And the other scene, again, it's only like a half didn't like, was the lunch scene that you spoke about when the person on the other table was putting stuff
on the table.
Because I didn't mind the lunch scene as well, but when that was happening, I was kind of like, okay, now you're just showing that this guy's just a grumpy old man. But then I did laugh when he drank out of his wine. So... Mate, there's very little I didn't
that annoys
like
me at restaurants myself though. So I was like, I'm in for this.
Yeah.
People do that. They take your little space. I'm like, hey, this is our table.
Yeah, you would.
Yeah, I'm a grumpy old man already. We know that.
That's it. I really liked the film, so I didn't dislike much.
Only things I didn't like were Eliza's short films. Just the vagina. I was just like...
It was supposed to be...
It was supposed to be weird and out there.
Completely off-brand for everything else in that film. And you know what? I don't know whether it was Grace Van Patten or whether it was just the way their character was written. It felt so on-brand.
I don't know. I just didn't like... I thought it was just so contrasting to everything else that you've seen. And then you get these full-on sex videos. It was just...
It was very interesting. I wasn't expecting that.
No. All right, well, we've touched on a bit of this stuff already, but this film was saying quite a bit, I think. So hit us off with what you think.
Look, I can sort of bundle three of them into one, being family, sibling rivalry, and parenting.
Yep.
All rolled into one.
I've got similar lines for family as well.
Yeah. Look, basically... what I love about this is, as I said, this is just an ordinary family, and everything that this family is going through is exactly what other families are going through in one way or another. Not the specifics of it, but the way you feel and, feeling left out, or parents not being able to look after the kids properly, or resentment for your sibling, all that kind of stuff. Was just, I love the fact that it just dedicated the time to showing it.
Yep. So, yeah, like the parenting thing as well. Like, they made some comment along the way that you shouldn't be best friends with your kids. And, this dysfunction of this family, no one getting along with their wives, it's all sort of tied into that family
What do you think
dynamic.
about that idea of being best friends with your kids?
It's an interesting one. It's a very interesting one. Because I don't know whether that's what Danny felt like, the way that, he's sitting by his phone watching the text, seeing whether Eliza's texting back, and you can see it, and then it just goes away, and he's like, oh,
well, the idea of, him calling her, and she's like, you know what, I won't go out, I'll talk to you. Like, how it's like roles reversed.
Yeah.
But you know what, I've in life, this is not in film anymore, I've never seen an issue with people being really good friends with their parents. I think it's awesome.
It is good, but then sometimes you do need a parent figure to take charge and take command and actually, guide or say, hey, you've done the wrong thing there, rather than just side with them the whole time.
True, yeah, no, I think a healthy relationship isn't just siding with them, though.
Yeah. What else have you got?
Well, success and legacy, and what defines success, and what part of your legacy is more important. Is it more important that you were had a prominent career and you're going to be remembered, or is it more important that you've got a great family that's going to continue to live on?
Good points.
Yeah. And then the other thing that I've got is life and big moments versus little moments. And this is probably the thing that struck a chord with me most. And that's why I love seeing a film like this. That in your life, Jesse...
It hasn't been that long, but yeah.
No, but in your life, you're going to be dictated more about the small moments of your life than the big moments.
Yeah.
And you're going to look back on your big moments of your life, and they're going to be good or bad or whatever, but you're going to be able to count them on two hands probably. But the small moments that define who you are and everything else that happens are happening right now. So I like the fact that they focus on that. Like, just because everyone goes to college and has to say goodbye to their daughter doesn't mean it's not a transformation moment for Danny and all this kind of stuff.
I think they closed that off really well at the end with Harold sitting there watching that black and white 30s film, and he's talking about, why they're all dressed in tuxedos. Why does no one, everyone dresses so casual now? And it was sort of like this nice thing, people lived shorter lives and they just wanted to celebrate life. And that's what it's about.
That a nice line.
That was a very nice line.
And I love the fact that Danny always wore shorts.
He sure did. I think it was saying a bit about art as well. Like you mentioned before, this family with, your pianos, your sculptures, you're playing music, making your films. And early on, it did lose me a little bit with a lot of the art talk. But yeah, I think that it was trying to show this world that, art is important no matter what it is, and art can be family, like you said too. I liked this sort of change idea too, like change versus not change, because I don't think Harold changed at all. I think that's pretty obvious.
No.
And it was almost like when he was in hospital, it was like the hospital was stepping in as this parent, because he literally couldn't move. There was nothing that he could do. It turned into all the kids. And this sort of showed you that he was never going to change. He was stuck in this moment, and he was never going to change. And I liked that Matt and Danny did change. And, at the end, Matt says, hey, I'm going to try and visit Dad more. I want to spend more time with my kid who's starting kinder. I'm going to pay for Danny's care. I'm going to pay for you to come to LA. Yeah. And, and then Danny's changes. He finally, at the end, he says that goodbye to his dad. Says, I'm going to LA. I'm doing something for myself for a change.
So I, for some reason, didn't have that in my favourite scenes, but I love that. I love that scene.
Just smashes the cookies.
But the way he kind of whispers it, because he's saying it to himself. He's not saying it to his dad. He's like letting go, and what is it? Like, I love you, I forgive you. All the stuff that they learned in that session.
And he had a prior conversation with Matt about, when they actually have to say goodbye. And this was like he was saying goodbye.
But it was awesome because it was his way of being like, look, I'm doing everything for you. You can't question, how much I love you and how much I'm always going to be here for you. But you know what? I'm not doing myself at the moment. I need to do myself. And I love that. And you could almost argue that, and I've seen some stuff online being like, what about that last scene with Danny? Like, that was stupid, mouthing those words. And it's like, no, that was perfect.
Yeah.
He said it because he wasn't saying it to his dad. He was saying it to himself. And that was the final part of his transformation.
Yeah.
And again, the transformation doesn't have to be huge. It doesn't have to be you're now a successful piano player. No, you've just taken a step to looking out for yourself more than anyone else.
And rebuilding that connection with his brother, which I think was really important for him too.
Without hampering the connection with his father. In fact, if anything, strengthening the connection with his father.
Yeah, because he's like,
not getting pushed around.
The dad's got the carer. He's going to be okay.
Yeah,
he's going to be okay. There's nothing that he can do by staying there for the time being.
And the way that Harold was like, no, you have to do this. You have to be there for me. You have to do this. And he's like, I don't. But I did love it how he said, I'll clean this up. Like, the cookies.
there's a little bit about perceptions too, how people perceived you, whether it was in the family, whether it was in the art world. And then finally, I liked this sort of idea of New York as well. Like
I was waiting for this because you had to go at one of the movies about LA or Hollywood not being should have been a character, wasn't a character. New York was a massive character.
Yeah, I almost had New York in the characters and like, I'll hold it here. Like New York, there's just those art galleries, plus there's constant talk about the Mets, the baseball, the Knicks, just throughout the film. So it was just nice to get this feeling of where they are.
So New York.
And it was so New York, and so they used that LA comparison so well with Matt as well. Like LA, New York are these complete differences, and Matt was such a complete difference to everyone else. I really liked that. And then they combined them at the end by Danny's going to LA, so that stark difference was gone.
He's literally getting out of there. Yeah.
So I did like that, yeah. All right, well, what did we take away from this film?
What I loved that you kind of slightly just referenced then was that the family actually never really talks about anything meaningful. And any time it gets too serious, they sidestep the conversation, and nobody stops them from sidestepping because they don't actually want to get in that serious conversation. And a lot of the time is they'll be talking about something and they'll be like, oh, the Mets game's on, or we would say, oh, how'd the Knicks go the other night? Every time it gets serious, they would change the subject completely. And I found that really relatable. I can imagine my family doing the same thing. If things got a bit serious, you just start talking about sport, no one would be like, hey, we should talk about this. It's just like, yep, cool, we've moved off this, that's fine.
I've got literally the same sort of thing, but from a different perspective. Okay. So the cuts from the scenes were incredible in doing the same thing. They literally, anything that was happening, they cut it from actually continuing. So it wasn't like you're getting this repeat, but like, for example, when Danny's doing that speech at the end, he's about to say thank you to everyone for listening, and before he even gets to finish it, it just cuts to the next title card.
Yeah, right.
So
well,
similar sort of thing. Anything meaningful, it was just cut because that's what happened.
If it gets too meaningful, the idea of the film changes because the film isn't about the big meaningful things necessarily. So really, I enjoyed that because initially it was standing out for me early on. I was like, they just keep cutting themselves off, or this wouldn't have been bad to see at the cinemas. This would have been good, but I don't know how profitable.
Small market,
yeah. Then that's an interesting thing. So I think there's definitely still a cinema-loving audience who love to see these types of movies, and if it had have got more awards buzz, then maybe it starts to become profitable at a cinema. But in a sense, I also think that it has a great space on a streaming product because it's compounded by the fact that it's got Sandler, Hoffman, Stiller, Thompson in it to make people go, oh, I'll watch this anyway. And it just makes... I find it really interesting to see how it's going to play out. And we talked about this at the start. In the next few years, these really, let's call them Oscar-worthy films, aren't necessarily going to make money in the cinemas if they don't get nominated, right? Mm-hmm. So there's going to be places on streaming platforms for them to live at the very start because they're going to be like, look, if this film doesn't get nominated, then we aren't going to make money on it. But it's still a great film.
Yeah.
So it's going to be very interesting to see how the industry trends with having to have cinematic releases prior to getting nominated and all that kind of stuff, because I think there's a great opportunity on streaming services for all these kinds of films consistently coming out.
Totally agree. 100%.
And I'm not talking like coming out after it's done 3 months. I'm talking about it living very start. You go, hey, there's a new really good movie coming out. It's on Netflix or it's on whatever.
All right. IMDb.
Yeah.
Did you jump on IMDb at all to look up anyone, anything?
I did. As I said, I don't think I watch a film without being on IMDb anymore. I sadly did do it for Grace Van Patten for Eliza.
Me too.
And it annoyed me.
It annoyed me too when I
was like, God, you are so familiar.
I was like, it's that Cheyenne Woolley, whatever her name is, look alike again. And I was like, oh, damn, I remember what she's from now.
So the thing that annoyed me is that, so she's from Tramps, which is a film that we did on Netflix not too long ago. The thing that annoyed me on Tramps, I made a point of being like, this girl can act, and I am going to keep an eye on her because I want to see what else she's in. And as soon as I see another film she's in, I'm like, oh, who's that?
Yeah.
So that's on me. I'm really sorry, Grace, but it won't happen again because I think you're a star. I'm going to buy some stock in Grace Van Patten. No,
I did the same. I looked her up too because I couldn't work out what she was from. But I also had another one.
Yeah.
The Dr. Sony.
Oh, yeah.
So her name is Sakina Jaffrey, and she plays Linda Vasquez in House of Cards. So I was like, I remember you. I know you from something. I was like, you're from House of Cards. Yeah.
See, I needed to do Jean, Elizabeth Marvell, who's Heather Dunbar from House of Cards. Because you know what? As soon as I saw her, I'm like, you're familiar. And then I was like, House of Cards. But I just wanted to double check.
Yeah, good. All right. Well, have you got any questions that you'd like to ask me?
Yeah, I do.
Good, go.
What did you think of the ending when they find the piece of work of Harold's? So, did it say that, yes, he was successful and no one, including himself, really knew it? Or was it just highlighting the ambiguity of what is good art, what makes good art?
I think the second part, there's that question as what is good art? And I also had that, my question to you, one of my questions was, what's actually in there? I found that more intriguing.
That was the piece that he spoke about.
Yeah, but what's it look like?
Okay.
I want to know exactly. Sure. I knew that's what he's talking about.
But I remember he said they're like, oh, they've lost it. He goes, no, it's in storage
in there.
somewhere.
I just want to know what it looks like what's it visually like compared to what else we saw.
Yeah.
What's it look like? But yeah, I think you get like that second part that you're talking about where, it's about this ambiguity. I like it.
And art it's the best thing about art is that it's incredibly subjective.
Massively.
And for us, like my favourite art form is cinema.
Yep.
And the beauty is, and we've proven this on this podcast, that if one person likes it, it doesn't mean everyone likes it.
Exactly.
And that's why we love art.
It is. Sometimes we have better discussions when we both differ on our opinions.
We definitely do.
Do you have anything else you want to ask?
No, that was all I wanted to ask you.
At the start, this hasn't happened since I think Beast of No Nation.
Oh wow!
When the Netflix logo came up, it didn't do the didn't.
You know, when you first said that in our very first podcast, I was like, "Well, I'm going to listen to this every time." Damn it!
Yeah, I didn't because I stopped it and I went back to the start. I'm like, maybe I just missed it. Played it at the start twice. No.
So Beast of No Nation was similarly had a theatrical release and was, I think, trying to be in the hunt for awards. Surely it's got nothing to do with that.
You'd think not. Yeah, I don't know. I just picked up. I was like, because I'm so used to the dun.
We've got it. Like, you know what? A Google search probably gives us the answer to that.
Possibly. Yeah. Just thought I'd get your opinion.
Damn it.
One thing. So there was a scene where Matt was filling up with petrol and he's on the phone to his kid. That scared the living day out of
the same thing, yeah.
I was like, surely that's a no-no.
I also think that maybe
petrol stations are leading us on.
Yeah, maybe it's not that big an issue.
Your phone's not going to blow up with...
I only realised that in the last few years that you're not supposed to use your phone at a petrol station. But I don't think it's that big.
I was walking to pay, so I'd left the car's off, and I took my phone out of my pocket, and the guy on the PA said, "Put your phone away."
Oh, really?
Yeah.
It's a keen eye.
Yeah, very keen eye.
Right.
It must have been a very quiet day.
I wonder what it does.
I don't know. I saw this online, this quote, and I liked it. Danny has a bum leg, but Matthew's hang-up's just as crippling.
Oh,
well, how good's that?
I don't know. I think it's a little bit forced.
I liked it.
Yeah,
I just liked it.
No, but the beauty of both those characters is that they basically overcome both of those deficiencies.
True.
One being physical, one being emotional.
Yeah. Good answer. I liked it. All right, let's wrap this up. We give our film a rating out of 5, and then we see what we've got as a team. So, MJ, what are your thoughts?
Oh, well, after this great discussion, I very much enjoyed it. Perfectly captured the importance of in somewhat mundane moments in life. And it did so with a thoughtful and relatable family dynamic and aided by great characters portrayed by great performances. It opened up my brain a little bit, and that's what you search for in a good film. 4 stars.
Very nice. So I find when I was trying to write this, I found it really hard to try and verbalize why I like this film. Because I did like it, but I found it hard. And
we just spoke about it for under an hour.
And like it was fairly complex and didn't necessarily have this. It didn't really have a happy ending. Like it's not a
not necessarily, but
it
didn't. It had a more positive than negative ending.
And to me, that's just life. So you don't get to choose your family, but you get to choose which family you pay the most attention to and spend the most time with, I guess. And I liked that. So I too am giving it a 4 out of 5. So as an average, what does that give us, MJ?
I didn't bring a calculator.
Nah, it's a tough one. We might have to say that. 4 out of 5.
That's why if Heater was here, I don't think we'd be looking at an average of 4.
Probably not. So this is going to bump it up in our rankings quite a bit.
Not enough guns and Narcos characters for Heater, which is why we love having Heater as a point of difference sometimes.
We do. All right. Well, we are on social media. We have Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. If you search us, we're at Flix Forum. The question I'm going to ask this week is, will anyone tell Eliza that her films aren't that great?
Aren't they?
I don't know. I don't know. See, that's probably a part of the question too.
Very subjective. Jesse.
Very subjective. It's art. We spoke about this. So that'll be on social media. Please continue.
She'll make it.
Yeah. Okay, good. I'm glad. Well, please continue to listen to us through Podmas as we're going through right up to Christmas Day. Give us a 5-star rating on any of the platforms that you listen to us on. Tomorrow, we're doing another film.
We are.
It's the 2017 horror drama 1922. It's directed by Zach Hilditch. It stars Thomas Jane, Neil McDonough, and Molly Parker.
Cool. I'm looking forward to this one too.
Me too. Stephen King again. Bring it on. Thanks for catching up. It was a good chat between the two of us.
Yes, no, so that's the sort of film that A, you want to watch for a reason, but B, you want to talk about. And half the reason we want to do this podcast is because we just want to talk about films.
Yep,
and
exactly.
As soon as I finish this film, I'm like, I need to talk to someone about this film.
It's nice.
It's a great film.
All right, well, we'll see you guys tomorrow.
See you then.